The Chrysalis Resort. Mid-July heat radiating off the asphalt. I am sitting in a car that smells of stale air and betrayal watching the beautiful people arrive. My name is Bernice Turner, and according to the text message glowing on my cracked phone screen, I am not supposed to be here. My family is inside toasting to a fairy tale wedding they bought by draining my entire life savings. They think silence is the price of admission to their happiness. They think I will stay hidden in the dark. But I am holding the receipts and the check is about to bounce. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate the time you spent here with us. I am sitting in the driver's seat of my 2016 Honda Civic and the air conditioning compressor is making that rattling sound it makes right before it dies. Through the windshield sticking to the peeling leather of my steering wheel, I can see the valet stand about 200 yards away. It marks the entrance to the callous manicured opulence of the Chrysalis Resort. It is beautiful in the way that things designed to make you feel small are beautiful. There are imported Italian cypress trees lining the driveway, standing like soldiers guarding the gates of heaven. I can see the shimmer of a massive silk tent in the distance, erected on the bluffs overlooking the ocean. I can see guests arriving in Porsche's G-Wagons and rented stretch limousines handing their keys to men in white vests who probably make more in tips tonight than I make in a week. And then there is me. I am parked in the employee lot hidden behind a row of hedges wearing a dress I bought off a clearance rack 3 years ago. I look down at my phone. The screen has a spiderweb crack running from the bottom corner to the center. The message from my mother Linda is still open on the screen. It is the last thing she sent me 3 hours ago, and reading it again makes the bile rise in my throat. Please don't come. We just want a drama-free wedding. My thumb hovers over the screen. I feel a laugh bubbling up in my chest, but it isn't a happy laugh. It is the kind of laugh that burns your throat and tastes like copper. They want a drama-free wedding. They want a fairy tale. They want to show the world that the Turner family has finally arrived, that we belong with the country club set, that my brother Kyle is marrying into money because he comes from money. The irony is sharp enough to cut skin. Because sitting here staring at the manicured lawns and the valets and the illusion of wealth, I know something nobody inside that ballroom knows yet. They paid for this whole fairy tale wedding with my money. To understand why I am sitting in this parking lot, vibrating with a mix of rage and nausea, you have to understand the Turners. Or more specifically, my place within the Turners. My name is Bernice. I am 28 years old, and up until this morning I thought I knew how the world worked. You work hard, you keep your head down, you save your money, and eventually you get to breathe. I am a registered nurse working the night shift at County General. It isn't the TV show version of nursing. It is 12 hours of compression socks, fluorescent lights that give you a permanent headache, and managing the worst moments of people's lives while being screamed at by meth addicts or entitled relatives. I live in a studio apartment that smells perpetually like my neighbor's garlic cooking, and I drive this beater car because every extra cent I make goes into paying off my student loans. I believe in the American grind, I really do. I believe that you eat what you kill and that nobody owes you a safety net. My parents Henry and Linda believe in something else entirely. They believe in the appearance of success. My dad runs a small landscaping business. He is a blue-collar guy who desperately wants to be seen as a white-collar executive. He talks loud tips big when people are watching and penny pinches when the doors are closed. My mom is his public relations agent. She is the kind of woman who will rewrite history in real time to make sure we look like the perfect nuclear family, smoothing over every crack with a layer of passive-aggressive denial. And then there is Kyle. Kyle is 32. He is the golden child. The prince. If I am the worker bee, Kyle is the show pony. He works a mid-level sales job that he thinks he is too good for, drives a leased BMW he can't afford, and has never faced a consequence in his life that my parents didn't checkbook wrestle away from him. I learned the dynamic early. It is a lesson that gets burned into you like touching a hot stove. When I was 16, I got a job at a diner to pay for my own prom dress. I spent my weekends smelling like fryer grease and ketchup counting quarters in a jar. That same month, my parents surprised Kyle with a brand new Ford Mustang for his high school graduation. I remember standing in the driveway holding my apron watching him rev the engine while my parents beamed. Mom turned to the neighbors smiling that tight plastic smile of hers. Bernice is so independent, she told them. She likes doing things for herself. She's a worker. It wasn't a compliment. It was a strategy. My independence was their excuse to stop spending resources on me so they could funnel everything into the Kyle project. But I accepted it. I loved them. They were my family. And in America, you don't sue your family. You don't audit your family. You trust them. That trust is exactly how they got me. The mechanics of this betrayal are important. You need to understand the money to understand the crime. When I was 19, my grandmother on my dad's side passed away. She was a hard woman, quiet and observant, and she was the only one who saw through the favoritism. She left me, specifically me, not Kyle, a chunk of money. It was an insurance payout from a minor accident she'd had years prior combined with her meager savings. It came to about $45,000. Not enough to retire on, but enough to change the trajectory of a life. Because I was 19 and terrified of screwing it up, my dad stepped in. He gave me a big speech about generational wealth and compound interest. He set up a custodial investment account. He put himself on the account as the custodian, the co-signer. Just until you're older, Bernice, he had said, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder, looking me dead in the eye with that earnest, fatherly look. I'll help you manage it. Make sure the market doesn't eat you alive. You're too young to handle this kind of capital alone. I am 28 now. I should have taken him off that account years ago. But life gets busy. I was in nursing school, then I was working double shifts. And honestly, I never thought I needed to protect my money from my own father. That is the blind spot. You lock your door against strangers. You check your credit card statements for fraud. But you don't think your dad is going to rob you. Over the last 5 years, I have been treating that account like a vault. I send $500 from every single paycheck directly into it. It is my freedom fund. It is for a down payment on a condo so I can stop renting. It is to pay off the last of my student loans in one fell swoop. By my math, with the market doing well over the last decade, there should be over $70,000 in there. That money is my safety net. It is the only thing that lets me sleep at night when the hospital shifts get too heavy and I feel like I'm drowning. Everything changed 6 months ago. The text came in the family group chat accompanied by a picture of a diamond ring that probably cost more than my car. She said yes, Kyle was getting married. Her name is Sabrina. She comes from a family that owns a chain of car dealerships in the next county. They have a lake house. They have summer people. Sabrina is nice enough, I guess, in that vague, distant way rich people are nice to the staff. She has never been rude to me, but she has never really seen me either. Almost immediately, my parents went into overdrive. This wasn't just a wedding to them, it was a merger. It was their chance to prove they were on the same level as Sabrina's family. They started throwing around words like destination, black tie, and the chrysalis resort. I remember sitting at Sunday dinner when Mom dropped the venue brochure on the table. It was heavy cardstock with gold foil lettering. Mom, I said, looking at the price list on the back. The numbers were astronomical. This is aggressive. Do we have the liquidity for this? I thought Dad said the landscaping business was slow this quarter. My dad slammed his fork down. It clattered against the china, silencing the room. Don't count my money, Bernice. He snapped, his face flushing red. I've been saving for a day like this. A man provides for his family. I'm not going to let Sabrina's father think we're paupers. I tried to keep my voice even. I'm just saying, maybe we do something smaller. More intimate. You don't have to prove anything. Don't be negative, Mom hissed. She looked at me with genuine disdain, like I was a stain on her tablecloth. This is your brother's moment. Why do you always have to bring everything down to dollars and cents? It's tacky, Bernice. You're being tacky. So I shut up. I went back to picking at my roast beef. I told myself that maybe Dad had a secret nest egg I didn't know about. Maybe he really had been saving. I didn't know he was saving my money. The exclusion started slowly like a gas leak you don't notice until the explosion. When the bridal party was announced, I wasn't in it. Sabrina had 5 bridesmaids, her sorority sisters and a cousin. "It's just about aesthetics, honey," Mom told me over the phone, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Sabrina wants a very specific look for the photos. You know, uniform heights. You're a little short for the dresses she picked. I am 5'4". Sabrina is 5'8". It was a lie, but I swallowed it because I didn't want to be the jealous sister. "You'll be there, of course," Mom added quickly. "Family is the most important thing. Actually, I need you to help me address the invitations. My handwriting is awful, and you have that nice nurse penmanship. That became my role. The logistics coordinator, the free labor. I spent 3 weekends stuffing envelopes until my fingers bled. I drove 2 hours to pick up sample linens because Mom didn't want to pay the delivery fee. I organized the hotel block spreadsheet. But when they went dress shopping, I wasn't invited. When they went for the cake tasting, they forgot to text me until they were already there. I met Sabrina for coffee once to hand off the RSVP list I'd organized. She sat there in her designer yoga gear, looking at my scuffed nursing shoes and my generic tote bag with a pitying smile. "It's so sweet of you to help," she said, sipping an oat milk latte. "Kyle says you're such a hard worker. It's good you keep busy." The way she said it made hard worker sound like a disease. Like I was a draft horse they were allowing in the paddock just long enough to pull the carriage. The breaking point, or what I thought was the breaking point, came 2 weeks ago. The wedding planning had hit a fever pitch. My parents were stressed. The bills were piling up. I knew the venue required the final deposit, a massive 5-figure sum 30 days out. I was at the hospital just finishing a 12-hour shift, smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion, when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Bernice, we need to talk about the wedding day." I typed back, "Sure, what's up? Do you need me to pick up the favors?" Her response came through bubbles that danced on the screen for an agonizingly long time. "We've been talking with Kyle and Sabrina. There's been a lot of tension lately. You're always so stressed about money and asking questions. It's making everyone anxious." I stared at the screen, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights of the nurses' station. Anxious. Because I asked how they were paying for a $40,000 florist bill. The next text hit me like a physical blow. "We've decided it's better if you don't come to the ceremony or the reception. We want a drama-free day for your brother. We hope you understand." I felt the blood drain out of my face. My hands went numb. I sat down on the rolling stool before my legs gave out. I switched apps and messaged Kyle. "Mom just told me I'm uninvited, Kyle, seriously." I waited. The 3 little dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a single emoji appeared, a thumbs up. That was it. That was 30 years of brotherhood. That was me helping him with his homework, me covering for him when he snuck out, me lending him cash he never paid back. A thumbs up. It felt like a punch to the gut. I sat there in the hospital hallway and cried until a security guard asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I lied. For 2 weeks I sat in that pain. I thought that was the bottom. I thought being told I wasn't good enough, that I was drama, that I was an embarrassment to be hidden away, was the worst thing they could do to me. I thought the tragedy was emotional. I thought the wound was just rejection. But sitting here in my car looking at the text message again, "Please don't come," something shifts in my brain. The timing. The final deposit for the venue was due last week. My dad had been complaining about cash flow all month. And suddenly, right after the deadline, right when the checks had to clear, they cut me out. Why disinvite the person who has been doing all the free labor right at the finish line? Unless you're afraid of what they might say. Unless you're afraid of what they might find. A cold shiver goes down my spine, ignoring the heat of the car. I thought that text was the worst thing they'd ever do to me. I was wrong. To understand the kind of cold, hard rage that fuels a person to sit in a parking lot and contemplate ruining a family event, you have to go back 10 days. You have to go back to the moment the blindfold didn't just slip, it was ripped off. It was the night of the disinvitation. I was sitting on my thrift store couch, staring at that thumbs up emoji from my brother. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I felt unmoored, like gravity had suddenly stopped working. When your family cuts you off, you instinctively reach for the things that are solid. For me, that was the Freedom Fund. I needed to see the number. I needed to remind myself that even if they didn't want me, I was safe. I had a future. I had $70,000 that belonged to me, protected by the ghost of a grandmother who actually gave a damn. I opened my laptop. My hands were shaking so bad I mistyped my password twice. I finally got in and clicked on the portfolio summary. I waited for the little spinning wheel to load, visualizing the number. 72,000, I told myself. Maybe 73 if the tech sector had a good quarter. The screen refreshed. Total portfolio value, $3, $412, $8. I stared at it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just blinked. It didn't make sense. It was like looking at a clock that said it was 25 o'clock. I refreshed the page. $3, $412.08. I logged out and logged back in. $3, $412. Then the physical reaction hit. My stomach dropped as if I were in a falling elevator. I felt the blood drain from my extremities, leaving my fingers numb and tingling. I scrambled to the transaction history tab, clicking so hard I nearly cracked the trackpad. There it was. A massacre in red text. It hadn't happened all at once. It was a slow bleed over the last 8 months, ramping up aggressively in the last 6 weeks. January 12th. Withdrawal. $5,000. Transfer to H&L Turner. Joint checking. February 14th. Withdrawal. $8,500. Transfer to H&L Turner joint checking. March 20th. Wire transfer. $12,000. The Chrysalis Resort and Spa. April 05. Withdrawal. $4, $200, $100. Velvet Rose Florals. I scrolled down, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. There were dozens of them. Transfers to my parents. Direct payments to wedding vendors. A $3,000 charge for a tuxedo rental and fitting. They hadn't just dipped into the pot, they had scraped it clean. They had taken the money. I scrubbed bedpans for the money I ate instant noodles to save, and they had turned it into centerpieces and silk napkins. I grabbed my phone and called the investment firm's support line. It was 8:00 p.m., but I got a night shift representative named David. I tried to sound calm, but my voice was an octave too high. "There's been fraud on my account," I said. "Unauthorized transfers, tens of thousands of dollars. I need to freeze it." David put me on hold. The elevator music sounded like a funeral dirge. When he came back, his voice was hesitant. "Ms. Turner, I'm looking at the authorization logs. These transfers were initiated by the co-owner of the account, Henry Turner. His credentials were used. He passed the two-factor authentication. But it's my money," I pleaded, gripping the phone. "He's just the custodian. He's not supposed to touch it. I see that he is listed as a joint owner with full survivor rights and withdrawal privileges." David said, his voice dropping into that robotic customer service sympathy that means there is nothing I can do. "Legally, both parties on a joint account have equal access to the funds. The bank cannot arbitrate a dispute between joint owners. If you believe this is theft, you would need to handle that externally." I hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was mathematical. It was grand larceny disguised as fatherhood. I called my mother first. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to know if she knew. She picked up on the second ring, sounding breathless. "Bernice, I told you we can't handle a long conversation right now. I'm trying to confirm the seating chart and—" "Where is my money?" I cut her off. My voice was deadly quiet. "What, the investment account? Grandma's money. My savings. It's gone." "Where is it?" There was a pause, a silence so loud it screamed guilt. Then the tone shifted. She didn't sound shocked. She sounded annoyed. "Oh, Bernice, don't be so dramatic. It's not gone. It's been reallocated. Reallocated. You spent $60,000 of my money on a party I'm not even invited to." "Here, talk to your father," she said, and I heard the phone fumble. "Bernice." My dad's voice boomed. He sounded confident, almost jovial, like he was about to explain why he was right. "Listen, calm down. We had a liquidity issue with the business, and the wedding costs ballooned a little bit. We needed to bridge the gap. You stole my retirement," I said. "You stole my house down payment." "Watch your tone," he snapped. The jovial dad vanished, replaced by the patriarch. "That money was family money. Your grandmother left it to us to manage for you. And who raised you? Who put a roof over your head for 18 years? You think that was free? That money was in my name, Dad, for my future." "And Kyle is your brother," he shouted. "This is his future. This wedding is an investment in the family's reputation. When you get married, we'll do the same for you. But right now you're single. You're renting. You didn't need that cash sitting there doing nothing. We put it to use. You didn't ask me. I didn't have to." He yelled, "I'm your father. I'm on the account. It was my legal right. And frankly, Bernice, you're being incredibly selfish. Your brother is marrying into the Miller family. Do you know what that means for us? For my business, you should be happy to contribute to the family's success instead of crying over a bank balance." I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't a break. It was a solidification. The tears stopped instantly. My breathing steadied. I looked at the phone recording app I had instinctively turned on when I dialed. "So you admit you took it," I said. "To pay for the wedding." "I admit I managed the family finances." He scoffed. "Now stop calling and harassing your mother. We have a big week ahead of us." He hung up. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I didn't go to work. I called in sick the first time in 3 years. I sat at my kitchen table, which was covered in printouts of bank statements, and I realized I couldn't do this alone. I needed a sanity check. I called Sarah. Sarah is an ER nurse, a single mom, and the toughest person I know. She came over with a bottle of cheap wine and a notepad. I showed her the statements. I played her the recording of the call. Sarah didn't drink the wine. She just stared at the wall, her jaw tight. "That is financial abuse, Bernice. Pure and simple. They groomed you to be the bank." "He says it's legal," I whispered. "He says because his name is on the account he can do whatever he wants." "Legal doesn't mean you can't fight it," Sarah said. "My cousin works at a legal aid clinic downtown. She handles elder abuse and financial exploitation. You're going to see her. Tomorrow." The lawyer's name was Elena. She was overworked drinking coffee out of a styrofoam cup, and she looked at my documents with the surgical precision of a coroner examining a body. We sat in a small, windowless office that smelled of toner and dust. "Here's the reality," Elena said, tapping the paper with a pen. "It's messy. Because he was a joint owner, criminal charges for theft are very hard to stick immediately. The police will say it's a civil matter. They'll say he had the keys to the car so he didn't steal it." My heart sank. "So they get away with it?" "No," Elena said, her eyes sharp. "Because this was a custodial account established when you were a minor. There is a fiduciary duty attached to that. He was legally obligated to act in your best interest, not his. Draining the account to pay for a party for a different beneficiary. That's a breach of fiduciary duty. We can sue him civilly. We can go for conversion of funds." "But that takes time," I said. "Years," Elena admitted. "And it costs money. And even if you win, if he spent it all on the wedding, you might be winning a judgment against a man with empty pockets." She leaned forward. "But you have something valuable here. You have the paper trail. You have the invoices. You have the dates. In civil court, and in the court of public opinion, receipts are ammunition. If you want any leverage to force a settlement to make them repay you, you need to document everything. Every text, every email, every lie." I left the office with a new understanding. The law was a shield, but it was heavy and slow. If I wanted justice, I needed to weaponize the truth. For the next week, I became a forensic accountant. I didn't sleep. I hunted. I went back 5 years in my emails. I found the thread where Mom asked to borrow $200 for groceries because business was slow dated 3 days after Dad withdrew $5,000 from my account for a consulting fee. I found the text messages from Kyle bragging about the bachelor party in Vegas, time-stamped the same day as a withdrawal for travel expenses. I built a timeline. Column A. What they told me. We're broke. We want a small wedding. We love you. Column B. What they did. Transfer $10,000. Invoice from luxury limo service. Disinvitation text. I organized it all. I took screenshots of the bank transfers. I scanned the invoices that the bank had provided in the detailed transaction report. I matched the withdrawal dates to the Instagram posts where my mother bragged about the exclusive vendors they had secured. Post. So excited to work with Chrysalis Catering. Only the best for my son. Bank statement withdrawal $12,500. Chrysalis Catering. It was undeniable. It wasn't just theft. It was a premeditated extraction of my life to fuel their vanity. 2 days before the wedding, they tried to gaslight me one last time. It was a family conference call. I suspect they wanted to make sure I wasn't going to show up and cause a scene, Bernice Kyle said. His voice was smooth practiced. Mom and Dad told me about the confusion with the account. Confusion, I repeated flatly. Look, it's done, Kyle said. The money is spent. We can't unspend it. You're making this really hard on everyone. Sabrina is stressed out. Do you want to be the reason my marriage starts off bad because of money? It's $70,000, Kyle. Family is more important than money, Mom chimed in. You'll understand when you have kids. You make sacrifices. I sacrificed, I said. I sacrificed my down payment. I sacrificed my student loan payments. What did you sacrifice? We're done discussing this, Dad barked. You are not coming to the wedding. You are going to stay home, cool off, and we will discuss a repayment plan, maybe $50 a month after the honeymoon. If you show up, I will have security remove you. Do not embarrass us. The call ended. They thought that was it. They thought the threat of security and the shame of being the outcast would keep me in my apartment. They banked on the old Bernice, the one who wanted to please them, the one who believed in the hierarchy. But that Bernice was gone. She died when she saw the balance reading 3,412.08. I looked at my laptop. I had a folder named The Truth. Inside was a PDF. 7 pages. Clear, chronological, indisputable proof that Henry and Linda Turner had embezzled their daughter's savings to fund a society wedding. I had options. I could file the lawsuit quietly. I could walk away and never speak to them again. But the lawyer's words stuck in my head. Receipts are ammunition. They wanted a drama-free wedding. They wanted the image of perfection. They had stolen my money to buy that image. I realized then that I didn't want the money back. I knew I probably wouldn't see it for years, if ever. I wanted the one thing they couldn't buy. I wanted the truth to be the guest of honor. I picked up my phone and drafted an email. I attached the PDF. Subject: a gift for the couple, the cost of the wedding. I added the recipients. The officiant, Pastor Miller, Sabrina's uncle. The wedding planner, Sabrina's father. Sabrina's mother. The bridesmaids whose emails I had from the coordination chain. I didn't hit send, not yet. I scheduled it. Scheduled send, Saturday 4:30 p.m., right in the middle of the vows. But that wasn't enough. I needed to be there. I needed them to see me when the phone started buzzing. I needed to stand in that room, the ghost at the feast, and let them look me in the eye when the facade crumbled. I went to my closet. I pulled out the simple navy dress I had planned to wear before the disinvitation. It wasn't designer. It wasn't flashy. It was the dress of a woman who pays her own bills. I packed a bag. I checked my bank account one last time, still empty. Then I walked out to my car, the heat of the July sun hitting my face. And that brings us back to now. Sitting in the parking lot of the Chrysalis Resort. The valet stand is 200 yards away. My phone is in my lap. The email is scheduled. The PDF is loaded. My dad thinks he can intimidate me. My mom thinks she can shame me. Kyle thinks I'll just roll over like I always do. I put the car in gear. I'm not going to park in the valet lot. I'm going to walk in the front door. They wanted a show. They're about to get one. The walk from the parking lot to the entrance of the Chrysalis Resort felt like walking underwater. The air was thick with humidity, but I felt cold. My heels clicked against the pavement, a rhythmic countdown that only I could hear. As I got closer, the sounds of the event drifted toward me, a string quartet playing something baroque and expensive, the low hum of polite conversation, the clinking of crystal. It was a sensory assault of wealth. Every detail from the valet attendants in their white gloves to the cascading floral arches framing the entrance whispered money. And every single petal, every note of music, every drop of champagne had been purchased with the hours of my life. I reached the check-in table at the entrance to the garden terrace. A young woman with a headset and a clipboard smiled at me. "Welcome. Name, please." "Bernice Turner." I said, my voice steady. She scanned the list, her finger tracing down the alphabetical rows. Her frown deepened. She flipped the page, then flipped back. "I'm sorry I don't see a Bernice Turner on the guest list. Are you a +1? "I'm the groom's sister," I said. The woman's face flushed. She looked up at me, panic flaring in her eyes. She had clearly been briefed. "Oh, I was told the groom's sister wasn't attending due to illness. I'm afraid I can't let you in without approval from the wedding planner or the hosts." "I don't need approval to see my brother," I said. I didn't wait for her to stop me. I sidestepped the table and walked onto the terrace. The scene was breathtaking. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hour glow over the white chairs arranged on the lawn. The guests were mingling near the bar, a sea of pastel dresses and dark suits. I stood at the top of the short stone staircase looking down at them. I felt like an alien species. I was wearing my simple navy dress, carrying a scuffed purse, holding on to nothing but the truth. They were holding champagne flutes filled with liquid that cost more per bottle than my weekly grocery budget. It didn't take long for them to spot me. My father was standing near the altar, laughing loudly with Sabrina's father, a man who owned half the car dealerships in the state. Dad looked the part of the successful patriarch in his tuxedo, his chest puffed out, playing the role he had bought. Then he turned. His eyes locked onto me. The laughter died instantly. His face went from jovial to purple in the span of a heartbeat. He said something to Sabrina's dad, patted him on the shoulder, and then started walking toward me. He moved fast with the aggressive stomping gait I remembered from childhood whenever I'd left a toy in the driveway. My mother materialized from the crowd behind him, her face a mask of performative shock. I didn't move. I stood my ground at the top of the stairs. "What are you doing here?" Dad hissed when he got close enough. He didn't shout. He kept his voice low, a menacing rumble meant only for me. "I told you to stay away." "I was invited," I said calmly. "And then I was uninvited when the check cleared." "You are going to turn around and walk back to your car right now," he said, stepping into my personal space. I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "You are not going to ruin this for your brother. You are not going to embarrass me in front of the Millers." "Embarrassment is a choice, Dad. So is theft." Mom reached us then, clutching her pearl necklace. "Bernice, please," she whispered, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. "We told everyone you were sick. Don't make us liars. Just go. We can talk about the other thing next week." "There is no next week," I said. "There is only the money you took, the $70,000. "Lower your voice," Dad snarled. He looked around. A few guests near the back were starting to turn their heads, sensing the tension. The string quartet had stopped playing to turn the page of their sheet music, leaving a sudden heavy silence in the air. "I'm not leaving," I said. Yes, you are. Dad reached out and grabbed my upper arm. His grip was hard, painful. His fingers dug into my bicep. He tried to physically steer me toward the exit, treating me like a misbehaving child in a supermarket. I dug my heels in. Let go of me. I said move! He gritted out, yanking me harder. I pulled back, wrenching my arm away from him. The movement was sharp and sudden. You stole my money to pay for this, I said loud enough that the guests at the nearest tables turned fully around. I'm not going anywhere until you admit it. He panicked. I saw it in his eyes. The facade was cracking. The perfect father, the provider, the man of status was dissolving, and underneath was just a desperate, greedy man. He didn't think. He just reacted. He swung his hand. The slap was loud. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet garden. It caught me square across the left cheek, snapping my head to the side. The force of it staggered me. I took a step back to steady myself, my hand flying to my face. The sting was immediate and hot, followed by a metallic taste in my mouth where my tooth had cut my inner cheek. The garden went dead silent. The birds seemed to stop singing. The wind seemed to stop blowing. Someone gasped. A glass shattered on the patio stones. I stood there, my hand covering the red mark that was rapidly forming on my face. My ears were ringing. I looked back at him. Dad was staring at his own hand, breathing heavy, his eyes wide. He realized too late what he had done. He had broken the first rule of the Turner family: keep the violence hidden. I straightened my spine. I took my hand away from my cheek. I didn't cry. I refused to give him that satisfaction. You stole my college fund, I said. My voice wasn't screaming, but it carried across the lawn, clear and unwavering. You stole my savings. You paid for this wedding with my retirement account. The guests were staring. Sabrina's parents looked mortified, frozen in place. Sabrina, standing near the archway in her white robe, looked like she was going to be sick. Dad tried to salvage it. He stepped toward the crowd, his hands raised in a plea. She's unwell, he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She's been having mental health issues. She's off her medication. She's always been dramatic, always trying to get attention. He was playing the only card he had left, destroy my credibility to save his own, and that was the moment the phones started buzzing. It was 4:30 p.m. It started as a ripple, a ding from a purse in the front row, a vibration on a table, then another, then a chorus of chirps, buzzes, and notification tones sweeping through the crowd like a wave. The email had landed. I watched as the guests, confused by the sudden technological synchronization, reached for their pockets. Don't look at your phones, Mom shrieked, her voice cracking. Please, everyone, just look at the bride. It's spam. It's just spam. But nobody listens when you tell them not to look. I saw the officiant, Pastor Miller, pull his phone from his vest pocket. He adjusted his glasses. I saw the wedding planner check her tablet. I saw Sabrina's father, the man my dad was so desperate to impress, unlock his iPhone. The silence that followed wasn't the shocked silence of the slap. It was the studious, horrified silence of people reading a dossier. They were seeing the PDF, the timeline, the screenshot of the withdrawal on January 12th, the screenshot of the withdrawal on March 20th, the invoice from the venue, the side-by-side comparison showing the money leaving my account and entering the Turner joint, checking, then immediately leaving for Chrysalis Resort. Oh my God, a woman in the second row whispered. She held her phone out to her husband. Look at the dates. He cleaned her out. $70,000, a man's voice said from the back. Jesus, Henry. Dad was looking around wildly, sweat beading on his forehead. It's photoshopped, he yelled. She's a hacker. She made it all up. It's not photoshopped, Henry, Sabrina's father said. His voice was deep and terrifyingly calm. He held up his phone. This includes a scan of the bank's certified transaction log. I know what a bank ledger looks like. Kyle came running over then. He looked frantic, his boutonniere crooked. Bernice, what did you do? Why are you doing this? I looked at my brother, the golden child, the prince who got the Mustang while I bussed tables. I didn't do anything, Kyle. I just forwarded the mail. You ruined my wedding, he screamed, his face red. You're selfish. You've always been jealous. Did you ever wonder? I asked him quietly. Did you ever wonder how Dad could afford this? You know the business has been slow. You know they complain about grocery bills. Did you never once ask where the $50,000 for the venue came from? Kyle opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Dad, then at me. The realization was dawning on him, but he was fighting it. He wanted to stay in the fairy tale. Sabrina walked over. She moved like a sleepwalker. She was holding her phone. Her makeup was perfect. Her dress was pristine, but her eyes were hollow. Is it true? She asked. She wasn't asking me. She was asking Kyle. Babe, don't listen to her, Kyle pleaded, reaching for her hand. It's complicated family stuff. It's just accounting. Sabrina pulled her hand back as if he had burned her. She looked at the email on her screen. This says your father withdrew the last $4,000 3 weeks ago. That was the day we paid the florist. You told me your dad got a bonus. He did, I mean, it's all the same pot, Kyle stammered. It's not the same pot, Sabrina said, her voice trembling. It's her money. You stole from your sister to buy me flowers. Sabrina's mother stepped in, then physically placing herself between Kyle and her daughter. We need an explanation, she said, glaring at my parents. Right now, or we are leaving. It's a misunderstanding, Mom wailed, sobbing now. We were going to pay her back. It was a loan. A loan requires permission, I shouted back. The chaos was escalating. People were standing up. Arguments were breaking out in whispers. And then through the noise I heard the wail of sirens. A staff member, maybe the girl at the check-in desk, or maybe a server who had seen the slap, had called the police. 2 officers came around the side of the building, led by a security guard. They looked serious, hands resting near their belts. The blue lights from their cruiser reflected off the pristine white walls of the hotel. Who called it in? One of the officers asked, stepping onto the terrace. I did, a waiter said, stepping forward. He pointed at my father. That man struck that woman in the face, hard. The officer looked at me. He saw the red, angry mark on my cheek. It was undeniable. Ma'am, are you injured? He asked, walking over to me. He slapped me, I said. My voice was calm, almost detached. And he has also been misappropriating funds from a custodial account in my name. But right now, I'd just like to report the assault. My father puffed up, trying to use his size and his tuxedo to intimidate the police. This is a private family event. She's trespassing. I was defending my family. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back, the officer said, unhooking his handcuffs. You can't arrest me. I'm the father of the groom, Dad shouted. I paid for this place. Actually, I said I paid for this place. The officers didn't care about the irony. They cared about the assault. They spun Henry Turner around. He struggled, shouting obscenities, blaming me, blaming the government, blaming everyone but himself. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Mom was screaming, clutching at the officer's arm, until the second cop warned her to back off or she'd be next. Kyle was standing with his head in his hands. Sabrina was being ushered away by her parents, who were looking at the Turners with absolute disgust. The wedding was over. The illusion was shattered. As the officers led my father away, dragging him past the guests he had tried so hard to impress, the garden fell silent again. The guests looked at me, some with pity, some with fear, some with a newfound respect. I didn't shrink away. I didn't hide. I stood there, feeling the throbbing in my cheek, feeling the humidity in the air. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the empty altar. I didn't come here to ruin a wedding, I said. I didn't shout it. I just said it. I came to stop them from using my life savings to buy the illusion of a perfect family. You can't build a future on theft. I looked at Kyle one last time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'll be pressing charges, I said. And I'll be suing for the rest. Enjoy the party. I turned around. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. I walked down the stone stairs past the check-in desk, where the girl was staring at me with her mouth open, and back toward the parking lot. Behind me, I could hear the sound of Sabrina crying and the murmur of 100 people realizing they had been unwitting accomplices to a crime. I walked back to my beat-up Honda Civic. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. My cheek was burning. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt clean. They wanted a drama-free wedding. What they got was the truth. And the truth, it turns out, is expensive. The silence inside my car was heavier than the noise of the wedding had been. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The adrenaline that had carried me up those stone stairs and through the confrontation was draining out of me, leaving behind a cold, shaking exhaustion. I pulled down the vanity mirror. The mark on my left cheek was a vivid, angry red, the imprint of my father's fingers clearly visible against my pale skin. My mascara was smudged beneath my eyes, not from crying but from the sheer physical force of the blow. I touched the spot gingerly. It throbbed in time with my heartbeat. For a moment, a wave of nausea rolled over me. The old programming, the 28 years of conditioning that told me to be quiet, to be good, to protect the family image, tried to reassert itself. A voice in the back of my head whispered, "Did I go too far?" I had just humiliated my parents in front of everyone they wanted to impress. I had ruined my brother's wedding day. I had called the police on my own father. It felt like I had detonated a bomb in a nursery. But then I looked at the passenger seat where my folder of bank statements lay. I remembered the number $3,412.08. I remembered the months of lies. I remembered the thumb-up emoji. They hadn't just stolen my money, they had stolen my safety. They had looked at my future and decided it was less important than a floral arch. The guilt flickered and died, replaced by a dull, aching resolve. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the resort. I didn't look back at the silk tents or the valet stand. I drove carefully, obeying every speed limit because I knew my hands were too shaky to handle a surprise. When I finally got to my apartment complex, the sun had set. My phone had been buzzing incessantly in my purse, vibrating against the leather like a trapped insect. I turned it off before I even walked up the stairs. I couldn't handle the noise. I locked my door, slid the deadbolt into place, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was actually inside a fortress. I crawled into bed in my clothes and passed out. The fallout trickled in over the next 48 hours. I didn't have to seek it out. It found me. I turned my phone back on the next morning to a deluge of notifications, but I ignored the texts from my parents and went straight to the updates from the periphery cousins, distant relatives, and the grapevine of social media. The wedding had imploded. According to a text from a cousin I hadn't seen in 3 years, the reception had turned into a wake. Half the guests, including most of Sabrina's family, had left within an hour of the police taking my dad away. The food had gone uneaten. The band had packed up early. I saw a photo on Instagram tagged at the venue. It showed empty chairs and a dance floor that looked desolate. In the background of the shot, you could see Sabrina sitting on a retaining wall, face buried in her hands, her white dress pooled around her on the dirt. The caption read, "Drama at the Turner wedding. Police called. Groom's dad arrested." Yikes. The public shame was absolute. The drama-free wedding they had sacrificed my financial life to secure had become the biggest scandal the local country club set had seen in a decade. But I couldn't live on schadenfreude. I had to secure my position. On Monday morning, I walked into the police station. I formally filed the report for assault. The officer on duty took photos of my face, which had bloomed into a nasty purple bruise over the weekend. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "and I want a restraining order." It wasn't just about safety, it was about documentation. In the eyes of the law, I needed to be the victim who fought back, not the daughter having a spat. From there, I went straight to Elena's office. She looked at the photos of my face and the copy of the police report, and then she looked at me with a grim sort of pride. "You didn't tell me you were going to go nuclear," she said. "I didn't plan on the slap," I said, "but I planned on the truth." Well, the truth is working for us, Elena said, opening a file. I've already had a call from a lawyer representing your father. He's out on bail, but he's panicked. The criminal charge gives us massive leverage on the civil side. They want the assault charge dropped. They want the public posts taken down even though you didn't post them publicly. The email leak is considered damaging. I don't care about damaging, I said. I want my money. We're going to file a civil suit for misappropriation of custodial funds and breach of fiduciary duty, Elena explained, her pen scratching across a yellow legal pad. But here's the reality check, Bernice. If we go to trial, it will take 2 years, and they might bleed the accounts dry fighting us. The strategy now is settlement. We use the assault charge and the threat of a public trial to force them to liquidate assets now to pay you back. Will I get it all? I asked. You might not get every cent of interest you would have earned, she admitted. But we can go after the equity in their house. We can go after the landscaping business assets. We make it clear, pay the daughter back, or lose everything else. I left her office feeling lighter. It wasn't a check in my hand, but it was a path. Then I finally faced the phone. I sat in my car and opened the messages from my family. It was exactly what I expected, yet it still stung to read the words of people who were supposed to love me. There were 20 texts from Mom. They ranged from vicious to pathetic. You ruined Kyle's life. I hope you're happy. After everything we did for you. We raised you. We fed you. Please, Bernice, just tell the police it was an accident. Your father can't go to jail. He has a heart condition. You are a selfish, hateful girl. You have no family anymore. There were fewer from Dad, probably because his lawyer told him to shut up, but the ones from the night of the wedding were chilling. You're dead to me. Don't come near this house. And then there was Kyle, the golden child, the brother I had tutored in math, the brother I had covered for. His message came in Monday afternoon. It was long, rambling, and centered entirely on himself. Bernice, I don't know what to say. I didn't know he took that much. I thought he just borrowed a little. Sabrina is staying at her parents'. She won't talk to me. Her dad is talking about an annulment. You really blew everything up. I know you're mad about the money, but did you have to do it like that? We could have worked it out. We're family. Can you drop the police stuff? For me, it's over now. Just let us move on. I stared at the screen. It's over now. For him, it was a bad weekend. For me, it was my entire financial foundation. He still didn't get it. He still thought family meant I set myself on fire to keep him warm. I typed out a single response. I copied it and sent it to Mom, Dad, and Kyle. All future communication goes through my lawyer. Do not contact me again. Then I blocked their numbers. The isolation I feared, the loneliness of being an orphan with living parents, didn't happen. Instead, the opposite happened. The community I had built, the one I thought was secondary to blood, stepped up to fill the void. Sarah came over that night with a lasagna and a bottle of wine. She sat on my floor while I cried, not about the money, but about the loss of the hope that they would ever love me the way they loved Kyle. You didn't lose a family, Bernice, she told me, pouring a glass. You lost a parasite. There's a difference. My coworkers at the hospital rallied around me. Word got out, nurses talk, and suddenly, I wasn't just Bernice, the quiet night shift worker. I was the woman who stood up. One of the older charge nurses, a woman named Glenda, who I'd always been intimidated by, pulled me aside in the break room. I heard what happened, she said, pressing a Tupperware of homemade cookies into my hand. My brother stole my inheritance when I was 30. It hurts like hell. But you survive it. You're tough. She gave me a flyer for a support group that met on Thursdays. Survivors of financial abuse. I went to the first meeting a week later. I sat in a circle of folding chairs in a church basement drinking bad coffee. I listened to a man talk about his wife gambling away their mortgage. I listened to a woman talk about her parents taking credit cards out in her name. When it was my turn, I told them about the wedding. I told them about the drama-free text. I told them about the slap. I saw heads nodding. I saw eyes filling with understanding. Nobody told me I was dramatic. Nobody told me family comes first. They told me I was brave. They told me I was right. I realized then that the American ideal of the self-made life isn't about being alone. It's about choosing who you build with. My parents believed in appearances and the shallow veneer of success. I was starting over with nothing but a negative net worth and a beat-up car, but I had something they never did. I had the truth. And I had people who liked me for who I was, not for what I could pay for. The falling action wasn't a soft landing, it was a crash. But as I sat in that circle listening to strangers become friends, I knew I could walk away from the wreckage. I was bruised, I was broke, but for the first time in my life, I was free. It has been 8 months since the wedding that wasn't. I am writing this from the balcony of my new apartment. It isn't much, just a one-bedroom walk-up on the edge of town, with a view of a parking lot, rather than the ocean, but the lease is in my name. The security deposit came from my own paycheck. The furniture is mismatched, bought secondhand from marketplace listings, but nobody can take it away from me. There is a specific kind of peace that comes from knowing that the floorboards under your feet, however creaky, are actually yours. The legal war is over, or at least it has moved from the battlefield to the paperwork phase. We didn't end up going to a full jury trial. Once Elena filed the civil suit and the local prosecutor made it clear they were moving forward with the assault charge, my father's bravado collapsed. It turns out men who care desperately about their reputation don't do well with the threat of a public docket. We settled out of court. The terms are ironclad, enforceable by a judgment that hangs over their heads like a guillotine. They didn't have the liquidity to pay me a lump sum, ironic, considering how much they loved to flash cash, so they had to take out a second mortgage on the house. I get a check for $2,000 every month until the principal plus legal fees is repaid. Every time that check clears, I check the balance. It's slow, but it's happening. On the criminal side, Dad took a plea deal. He pleaded no contest to simple assault to avoid jail time. He got 2 years of probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a criminal record. For a man like Henry Turner, having to report to a probation officer is a humiliation worse than prison. He can't play the big shot when he's explaining his travel restrictions to a court clerk. The reputation they tried to buy at the Chrysalis Resort was destroyed by the very act of trying to secure it. In our town, word travels fast. They aren't the successful business owners anymore. They are the people who stole from their daughter. They are the pariahs. I haven't spoken to Henry or Linda since the day I sent that final text. Elena handles everything. I blocked their numbers, their emails, and even their social media profiles. I hear things, though. Small towns whisper. I hear that the landscaping business is struggling because people don't like trusting their property to a man with a theft accusation and an assault record. I hear that my mother has stopped going to her garden club because nobody sits next to her. They wanted to be the envy of the community. Instead, they became a cautionary tale. And then there is Kyle. The fallout for him was swift and absolute. The wedding obviously never happened. There was no reception, no honeymoon. Sabrina didn't just leave him at the altar. She erased him. I received a letter from her about 3 months ago. It was handwritten on heavy stationery. She apologized for not seeing it sooner. She told me that when she confronted Kyle in the days after the fiasco, he still tried to defend our parents. He still tried to tell her that I was the problem. That was the moment she knew she couldn't marry him. She realized that marrying Kyle meant marrying the dysfunction. She annulled the engagement and blocked him on everything. Kyle is back living in his old bedroom at my parents' house. The golden child. The prince who was promised the kingdom is 32 years old, single, and sleeping under the roof of the parents who ruined his life by trying to hand him the world on a silver platter. There is a dark poetic justice in that. They sacrificed my independence to prop up his success, and in doing so, they ensured his failure. He never learned to stand on his own, and now he has no one to lean on but 2 people who are drowning in debt. As for me, I am rebuilding. It isn't glamorous. It isn't a montage set to upbeat music where everything is suddenly fixed. It is the slow, unsexy work of recovery. I am working overtime shifts again, but this time the money stays in my account. I opened a new high-yield savings account at a completely different bank one, with security questions only I know the answers to. I watched the number go up slowly, $500, 1,000, 1,500. It's a fraction of what I had, but it feels heavier, more real. I started therapy. We talk a lot about the concept of sunk costs. For years, I kept investing in my family, investing my love, my time, my money, because I thought if I just put in enough, I would eventually get a return. I thought I would get their approval. But that's the gambler's fallacy. The machine was rigged. The only way to win was to stop playing. I'm learning that family isn't a suicide pact. In America, we talk about freedom a lot, usually in the context of flags and anthems. But real freedom is personal. It's the ability to look at the people who share your DNA and say, "You do not own me." My community has shifted. I spent Thanksgiving with Sarah and her kids. We ate turkey on paper plates and laughed until our sides hurt. Nobody criticized my job. Nobody asked me for a loan. Nobody told me I wasn't enough. I realized that I have more family now than I ever did when I was sitting at the Turner's dining table. I found my people in the trenches, the nurses, the friends who showed up, the support group members who nodded when I spoke my truth. I still have moments where the anger flares up. I'll see a father buying his daughter ice cream, or I'll hear someone talk about how supportive their parents are, and I feel that phantom ache of the limb I had to amputate. But then I touch the scar on my cheek, it's faded to a faint white line now, and I remember the price of admission. I remember that the pain of leaving was temporary, but the pain of staying would have been eternal. I didn't destroy the Turner family. I just turned on the lights. If the house was dirty, that's not the fault of the person who flipped the switch. People always ask me if it was worth it. If the money I'll eventually get back was worth the explosion, the police, the shame, the total loss of the only home I'd ever known. I think about that a lot. I think about the moment I walked out of that resort, leaving the chaos behind me. I think about the silence in my car. I think about the first night I slept in this apartment with the door locked and the key in my pocket. They wanted the perfect image. They wanted the fairy tale. They stole my savings to buy a perfect wedding. In the end, all they bought was the moment I finally walked away. Bernice's journey stands as a powerful reminder that while family bonds are strong, the need for self-respect and truth is stronger. Sometimes walking away is the only way to truly win. If you found satisfaction in her resilience, please consider subscribing and sharing your perspective in the comments below. We read every single comment of your thoughts. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Radiance. We'll see you next time.